What's up, guys? Welcome back to the show, Learning Business with Yelisei Cholak. It's your host, Yelisei. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. I appreciate your guys' support on the past two episodes. It was pretty good. I did the solo episodes, and now I brought our first guest in. This man's the myth. He's the legend. He's a dude I've been hanging out for some time, and he's really authentic. He's really an awesome guy. I would say he's easily overlooked. Like if you just meet him or you just see his social media, you can easily overlook him, and that's probably something he needs to kind of push more, double down in getting that. But he's a very smart guy, and I spoke at one of his events, and we had like a breakout session, and really got to know him more. That was incredible. That was incredible. So welcome, bro. Welcome.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. How are you?
Hey, doing awesome.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on here. I really wanted to bring you on because you were local, and like I found the studio. I wanted to get some content as well. I think it would be great for both of us. And with the knowledge you can bring to the audience, I believe it'll be pretty beneficial because, like I said, you're easily underrated. Like easily. When I just met you, I had no expectation or kind of no idea of it. But like when I was at the event and when we had the breakout session, when we kicked it off, I was very surprised. Like the advice you gave, you're the CEO material type of guy.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. So that's why I really wanted to bring you on too, because and with whatever you're doing with the speaking and coaching, helping people get on the stages, a lot of people want to do that in terms of bringing impact, and that's very good. And I think you can help a lot of people from the audience as well to bring it on, whether that's taking you on as a coach or just following you, looking at your tips, all the value you provide on social. I think people can really benefit from that. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. I wanted to ask you, what is kind of a question I've been thinking a lot, like, out of everything, why did you decide that you wanted to be a speaking coach? Because you're currently working at a job, you're an engineer, and that's something you're in the transition of doing, is becoming a speaker coach. What have you decided? Like, why out of everything speaking?
Well, it didn't start with speaking, to be honest, but I'll leave a little bit of that story
Right.
out. It was fitness coaching, and it got into
I see the
speaking.
muscles you got.
Yeah, man, was really into working out, wanted to help people with that because I could see that would be able to help people out, and it changed my life, and I knew it could change other people's lives. But then with that, I started realizing that it's not going to be able to change people's lives as much as I want to.
Right.
Or I change one person and maybe that changes their family's life. But the power behind speaking and having people that speak well,
Right.
that can change so many more people's lives.
It has a bigger ripple effect.
Exactly. As I think about people like Martin Luther King, and I use him as an example all the time. And you think about if he didn't speak, where would the black people be right now?
Right.
Would they be free people at this point in time?
Right.
And you think about other speakers out there that maybe aren't as influential as that, but because of the power of his words, because of the power of other speakers' words, they were able to make changes. And when you go and speak in front of an audience, you're speaking in front of so many more people than you and I right here speaking
Right.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
There's a podcast that's
There's
going
audience
to be
behind
able to
it.
hear this, the YouTube channel. People are going to hear this message time and time again.
Right.
And so as a speaker, you can impact so many more people. And that's where I made that shift to doing that. Plus my own desire to be on stage and speak
Right.
more, and overcoming the adversity of being that shy guy that would never talk to anybody, especially the ladies. When I was single, man, I just was always such a nervous wreck. And I wanted to overcome that for myself and be that best version of myself. And that's why I pushed to help other people so they can create that impact.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one other thing which you mentioned it indirectly is, I was talking to my coach one time and I was telling him, man, like, I do want to speak. We were going over a list of SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And my opportunities, I put speak on stages. And he's like, is there something that you think doesn't fit in that list? And I'm like, well, it's my opportunities. Like, I don't know. Like, it just kind of seems selfish. And he asked me a question. He said, how many people, do you know, or do you have an idea of how many people your age would like to hear your story, or your story would move them in a positive way. And I sat there and I said a lot. So with what you're doing, even with speaking, there's a lot of people that would hear your story, or we've all had our shares of struggles, our shares of overcoming things. And there's so many people that resonate with different stories. So what you're doing here is something a whole lot bigger than bringing people on stages. It's like what we talked about. It's that ripple effect. It goes farther than the eye can see. It literally does. And when someone gets on stage, they get good at speaking, they start putting themselves out there, and they come out, they tell their story. People get moved by it. It changes people in amazing ways. So I think that's what you're doing is beyond what you're doing is beyond just speaking or helping people get there. You're opening, you're solving a problem in the world with having people open up, having them be vulnerable, having them come and do all these things. So let me ask you this. What was, because I know you're also working, you also have a job, right? And you're trying to transition into becoming a full-time coach. What was your biggest struggle or your biggest hurdle within when you decided, hey, I want to become that speaker till now? Like, what's that thing you had to overcome? Or what was that moment when, because we all have this as business owners or when we're pursuing something, you have that moment where you could turn back or you could keep going. What was that moment for you?
Man, that's a good one. It's hard to really think about that. I
Or
wasn't
like,
expecting the question to go that way.
right. Or what was something that you really struggled with in the journey you overcame that you felt really good about yourself?
Really, just imposter syndrome. I mean, I still overcome that all the time in different areas, but really just knowing that people actually listen to me.
Right.
Like you said, I'm underrated because I've always been underrated. I've always been that little guy until I started working out. I've always been this leader that never has had authority. Although every situation I get into, I end up being the one that leads. And I ask for that opportunity to lead and have the actual title, and I get turned down. Oh, you just haven't done that. But yet I'm here leading all these people.
Right.
Why can't I lead? And I've kind of overcame that now, and that's really that push that's made me want to get out of the 9 to 5 because I can't make the impact that I want to. To give a little background on the 9 to 5 I program control systems. I automate the process of delivering parts to the line,
Right.
essentially within logistics. So programming robots and having them deliver parts. And I tell people all the time, I can talk to robots, I can make them do things, but I like talking with people more.
Yeah.
I can make more impact that way versus making something more efficient.
Right.
And
Right.
so just overcoming that imposter syndrome has been a really big hurdle for me in how I want to help more people. In communication is that big thing that people are so afraid of.
Yes.
And doesn't matter who you talk to at the end of the day, whether they're the CEO or they're the janitor, they're all the same. They're a person at the end of the day.
Right.
That's who they are.
Right.
Talk to them like a person.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be talked to like they're above you. And if you do talk to them like they're above you, they're not going to respect you. And if you talk to them like they're beneath you, they're not going to respect you either. So talk to them like they're just like you.
True. I agree. You said something about communication. I really believe is that's what the world lacks right now. I do have there's clients that I work with. I'll either send them a quote or we'll be doing something. They don't get back with me. You try to follow up. There's no communication. Or you hear other contractors, you hear the client saying he's bad at communicating. He doesn't text me when he's coming, or I call him when there's a problem. They don't answer the phone. It's a pretty big issue that is, I think, overlooked because people, it's not comfortable to communicate, even going on stage or just as far as with your clients. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. It's what really builds your brand. It's what really, because the world lacks of that. I truly believe that's one way you can really stand out is communicating. And communicating isn't just talking with your clients. I think it's also keeping your word. Hey, I'll be there tomorrow X time, and you be there. I'll do this and do it. right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're also solving. Like I said, a big world a big world problem, the communication aspect of it. And like what I mentioned in the beginning of the show, and you kind of touched on it, is being underrated is like is something you struggled with. And I believe your story, the way the way struggling with imposter syndrome, turning it around, figuring out how to overcome that, and bringing that up to an audience is powerful. Because if you look throughout history, the strongest people are the ones who went through struggles. And if you wouldn't have that, there's a lot of people I'm sure you helped that have imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't have went through that problem, you wouldn't be able to help them. You
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
know what to do, how to overcome that issue.
Yeah.
So it's like a place where you have to become comfortable with it's okay of being underrated, because I'll figure out a way to come over to the top. I'll figure out a way through this. And then you can teach that to your clients. You can teach that to your clients in terms of leaning into it, in terms of being that difference. Um, what is your favorite thing about what you do? What is that one thing that you love about what you do?
I gotta say, when I had you and even your brother and the other speakers on that
Right.
stage I did, that was awesome. I loved seeing that. And we had talked about it a little bit. Doug Mitchell was on there as well. We
Yep.
talked about that
Doug's a
some,
cool
about his,
guy.
yeah, we talked about his speech. And just to see y'all go up there and just shine and speak, that, man, that just made me warm and fuzzy on the inside. It just was awesome seeing that. But just seeing that light bulb click, people being comfortable and being confident in themselves speaking, every single client that I have that does that just makes me feel better. And I know that I can make an impact on them, and they'll go make an impact on one or two or 10 people.
Right.
And that's just that ripple effect, going back to what we talked about earlier. That's why I got into that, because I realized with the fitness coaching, I could only help so many people because I'm only one person, and I could build out a group or a company that would have hundreds of trainers under me if I got to that at one point, which
Right.
of course I didn't. But I would only impact so many people. But if I go help one speaker who helps another speaker who speaks and their video goes viral, all of a sudden that
You're
ripple effect.
unlimited.
I mean, just had a ripple that went all the way across the ocean.
Millions of people.
Way more
Multi-
than just a fitness coach. And nothing against fitness coaches,
right.
but for me, that didn't work for me. It'll
Right.
help impact people.
Right. You wanted something that was easier to reach a whole bunch of
Hmm.
people because you had that desire. You had that flame to help other people out, to light them up, to
Yeah.
really solve that issue in your thing.
And it really goes back to the communication you were talking about too. And not only can impact other people, but it can impact yourself and your relationships. I'll give a little silly example of communication problems.
Right.
My wife and I, one time, we were talking. There was an ant infestation at the house,
Right.
and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's ants over here by the dog food." And now we have the dog food bowl, which is next to the kitchen, and we've got the dog food container, which is in the laundry room. And I was talking about the laundry room.
Right.
And then she comes back, she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's ants by the dog food in the laundry room." And I'm like, "That's what I was saying." "Oh, I thought you meant the dog food bowl." Now that wasn't anything critical, but
Right.
still, I didn't explain enough and say that little extra part was in the laundry room for her to understand I was talking about in the laundry room. So she came back and was like saying this thing like it was something brand new to me when I already knew about it.
Right.
But I didn't communicate that properly to her. So communication can impact us in every single area of our lives, business, personal, just within ourselves, internally, what we're saying in our mind and everything. That's why I like to teach communication as well.
Yeah, because it's that one little piece you're talking about. It's missing. The whole point is changed.
Yeah.
The whole point is changed. It's like out of the window. And that's kind of what I was talking earlier. Like the world really lacks that. Like I see
Hmm.
that in the trades, in the construction industry a lot, to where people either just don't show up, they don't communicate, and it's frustrating because then it's a weight on the client. It makes it harder for everyone else around it, and that's why I love and respect about what you do in terms of getting your clients on
Yeah.
and making that difference in the speaking world, or in the communication world,
Yeah.
because it's crucial.
Oh,
It's what
yeah.
the world really
The
needs.
the jobs are lost because of that. Actually, we had some concrete work done at our house, and the guys did a great job. and my manager was trying to get work done, and he was asking me, "Hey, who'd you use?" And I told him. He reached out to that guy immediately, got a quote back, and then he reached out to a few other people just to understandably get a couple of comparisons and everything. Nobody else returned his call.
Right.
And just because of that, this was a guy that was ready, willing, and able to buy. And that doesn't happen all the time. I
Right.
understand that. But because they wouldn't communicate and even have that message to say, hey, sorry, missed your call, calling you back, they lost business.
Mm-hmm.
How often does that happen? Because,
Way too often.
and it's a simple communication. It doesn't take you being nervous. You're doing this all the time. But as simple as answering the phone can change your business, can
Yeah,
feed your family.
I agree.
But people drop the ball on that every day.
Yes, yes. It kind of what you were saying to that. I think a lot of people do that because they have a bias.
Hmm.
Have you read Kale's book, The Networking Machine?
Yeah.
He talks about that, a bias where um, people, when he was doing sales, there was people, let's say they get on the phone and they hear some Arab guy on the phone. They'd assume he's just some poor dude that hang up.
Hmm.
They wouldn't want it. Versus he picked up the phone, he dialed, he actually went through, he got leads, and his coworkers like, how are you getting all these leads? Like, we're here struggling, you're just crushing our numbers.
Hmm.
He's like, in reality, I just moved that bias away.
Yeah.
And in business, what you were talking about, I noticed that's what you have to do. You got to put your assumption. I think what a lot of people make the mistake of, like, they look of like, does this person has money? Does this person have money or not? And it can kind of go to like where they can try to rip them off, or if they see they can get more out of it, that's what they try to do. It's all communication issues.
Hmm.
If you it may not seem like that, but if you really go down through it, it is all communication issues to where people can't communicate proactively, or they have that bias, and it stops them from communicating, from actually following up with that client, from calling them, and actually, because you never know.
Yeah.
Like you said, he was willing and ready to go for it,
Hmm.
to have his concrete board. They didn't answer. They lost the client.
Yeah.
Communication tells you how big it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we've seen like Andy talk about it too the other way because somebody treated him poorly.
Hmm.
He went and told all his friends, and now all that person's basically banned. They're not going to get business in the area because he had so much influence. And now you may have somebody that doesn't have influence. Maybe they don't have money, but the way you treat them, they probably have a friend that has some money. I think it's three connections. You're like three to seven connections away from somebody famous or like a president or something like that that they
Right.
say. So
Wow.
you think about that. If you're bad to one person, you have a horrible communication, you treat them disrespectfully, who do they know that they're now going to keep you away from, or they're going to keep them away from you,
Yes.
rather? So that communication is important, and treating everybody the same is important because, yes, they may not be able to do business with you, but they probably know somebody that can, or they know somebody who knows somebody
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can do business with you that needs your services. So the way you treat people and the way you communicate with them is crucial.
That is communication, the way you treat people, because
Hmm.
that communicates to people your mindset, or you look on people. I can confirm what you were saying, communicating with people, those connections. In fact, I had that yesterday, or the day before. When I order, let's say, material slabs, I'm cool with this, with my suppliers or the sales rep that is assigned to me,
Hmm.
and like I'm always cool with them. It's like almost on a personal level, and like when they mess up on an order, I never outrage on them, or like when clearly it's their fault, I'll be like, you know what, I understand. We all make mistakes in an understanding way. What that has done to me, we've had an issue with a supplier. They put us on terms. We had a couple issues from our end. They locked us out, and they put us, so we had net 30-day terms.
Hmm.
They locked us out, put us on cash before delivery,
Hmm.
which when you open an account, you have cash on delivery. You just send them a check, whatever, they'll deliver it to you. They sent me that email, and I responded, kind of like my frustration, like, hey, we've worked the whole long time. I was pretty open in communicating. When there was an issue, I made sure to fix it, and here I am, like, kind of,
Hmm.
I didn't really like whatever was going on. The sales rep, and this was like after work. This was 6 o'clock in
Hmm.
the evening. The sales rep calls me up. I didn't answer, but she called me. We got on the phone the second day, and she's like, "Hey, I talked to the owner that day, and he said he'll fix it. Like, we'll get you back on. We'll get you back on the terms. We'll like we apologize. Like, kind of there was an issue for mine as well. So we're like, hey, let's just make sure we don't do this, and that's what goes to communication. Had I been rude to them, had I been treating it like I treated them genuinely as a person that has a soul, right?
Yeah.
As a person that deserves respect, because I do believe as human beings, it doesn't matter what your status is in material or things. A human being deserves respect, and I gave that, I communicated that, I reciprocated that. In return, they vouched for me to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
They vouched for me. Hey, well, let me call him. Let's fix this issue. And I had that happen not once. I've had that happen over the course of years, a couple of times, where there's an issue, and my sales rep calls the owner or the higher staff and vouches for me to fix the issue, to help me out solve this problem.
Yeah.
So it does a lot, and it's very, very, very underestimated. Very underestimated. People will communicate with you. Like that client I was telling you about before the show, I had a guy ask, he does cabinets, and he asked about what I do, right? And they're like, this is, or like he wanted to work together. Like, this is a guy you work with. His communication's great. He has this, like, he's a great company to work with. Now they're communicating for me, and it just goes back to what you were saying, how crucial it is.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm talking too much. I should have let you do the
No,
talking.
you're good. I want to bring up a point. Whenever you had that conversation with that sales rep, you were telling the facts. Like, hey, here's the facts here. You're being very transparent about that. I don't understand what's going on here. Let's have this conversation.
Right.
And most people won't have that conversation.
But let me I cut you off there. What I'll add in there is, I also admitted the thing I did wrong. I took responsibility for that. That's a key thing.
Yeah.
If you don't put that in, you're just going off as a selfish, arrogant guy.
Yeah.
So I had to mention that in. I wanted to insert that. Go on. With what
No,
you're
no,
saying.
that's great. No, so yeah, you told the things that you did wrong, but then you also said the things like, "Here's some issues that I have with this," and you didn't use the word issues, but essentially that's what you're
I told him I'm
saying.
frustrated.
Yeah, you're frustrated with this. Here's the situation. I'm not sure what's going on. What can we do about this to fix that? I mean, that's a perfect way
Right.
to go into that conversation rather than what most people will do, like, screw that company. I can't stand that company, and just go find somebody else. And now they're frustrated, and now they're never going to do business with that person again. You went and had that conversation, and that's so important to have. And then having that backing, that trust that you already had, and that other person confessing as well, essentially,
Right.
and going to bat for you. That's an important thing that clearly you built that safety for them to understand that they could have that conversation, and they trusted you as well, which goes back to communication in general.
Right.
You have to continue to communicate over and over again, because what's going on here in your head, people don't understand that. So it almost feels like you're over telling something, over communicating what you're saying, because you have all the information, but that third party doesn't. So you have to share more than you think you would in order to communicate properly, which is what you did in that
Right.
situation.
You have to open up the story and what is actually going on.
Yeah.
It is crazy to think what communication really is and what it does for you. It's so underrated.
Yeah.
Of what it can bring. Like you said, you're a couple connections away from it changing, from meeting the president. You're couple connections. You're one or couple connections away from changing your business, and that's what keeps me going in the early stages of business. Like, I'm a few connections away from getting there. I'm a few
Yeah.
connections from meeting that right client that's gonna get. And I think you can also apply that to your thing. What's your favorite podcast or book on communication? Like, what's that was an eye opener that you learned a lot about communication or about like coaching or about what you do?
Yeah, the one and it's actually I'm reading right now. I really like this one a lot. It's called Crucial Conversations. I can't remember the name of the author, but
I have that
Crucial
book. I haven't
Conversations,
read it, though.
really good. Really talking a lot about what we're talking about here today and creating that environment for people to feel like they're being listened to, but they're also listening to you. Because going back to your situation there, you could have just said, "This is wrong. You need to fix this now," and you could have been really rude to them. And hey, there's some right to that. That was messed up that they did that. But if you would have done that, that inside sales rep would have shut down and you would have been in the same situation you're in, rather than saying, "Hey, look, I'm frustrated here, but let's talk through this."
Right.
Essentially, so having those conversations, that's probably been my most favorite read so far on communication
Right.
skills.
Have you read Dare to Lead by Brené Brown?
I have not. That's
It's
on
a
the list.
it's very good too. Winray actually sent me that book. Um, it's very good. It talks
Okay.
about leadership, but it's the book is called Dare to Lead. It talks about leadership, but it really she hones in on communicating,
Hmm.
becoming vulnerable, which is part of communication. It's incredible. Like I read sometimes and I'm just like, wow, I learned so much. And I've had this issue in business to where you talk to another team member about the other team member, and
Hmm.
it's nothing bad. It's the truth, right? Or the facts, whatever happened. And that's what she writes in your book. That's gossiping.
Mm.
Like you talk behind another team member about another team member to another team member behind their back. That's gossiping in
Yeah.
your network or in your business. And when I read that, I was like, caught red-handed. I realized the issue, and it talks really good about. Like I highly recommend it if you
Okay.
want communication, leadership, especially.
Hmm.
Really good. Like talks about vulnerability, letting the guard down, becoming open is part of communication. It is
Yeah.
part of it to what you need,
Exactly.
what's necessary.
Exactly. And speaking of leadership, I mean that's the important thing. The leader has to communicate first.
Yep.
The people that are working for them aren't going to lead. Every employee, one of the things, especially younger employees, what they're worried about is if I say something, am I going to get fired? If I say something, are they going to make my life a living hell here at work? Maybe they won't fire me, but they're going to bury me in paperwork. They're going to bury me in busy work. And now I can't do the things that I actually enjoy with this job.
Right.
So you have to realize as a leader that you have this power that you don't realize you have. Most leaders don't realize that employees are afraid to say something because something might jeopardize their job. So you have to make sure you're being vulnerable and that you're communicating at all times that this is, and I hate to use the word, but it's a safe space. But it's a place that you can communicate freely within reason, of course.
Yes.
You can't
Yes.
just say whatever you want.
Right.
But if you have an issue, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in private. Don't bring it up in front of everybody if you've got this issue with me, unless if maybe I cussed you out in
Right.
front of the group, then hey, you can't talk to me that way. That's a
Right.
different story.
Right.
But if it's just something that was sleight of hand, perhaps, like let's have that conversation on the side. But you have to be, as the leader, willing to tell people up front and continue to communicate that because you say it one time, Philip or Yellowstay probably doesn't mean it. You say it twice, maybe, and you say it 10 times, they're okay, they probably mean this. But you have to continue to communicate that it is okay to have these conversations and that you want them, but then you also have to do that yourself.
Right. Communication isn't also just talking. It's also your actions.
Yeah.
Your actions are going to talk about if you said you're going to do something and you did it, you've communicated.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people have that outcast of if I said it, that's communication,
Yeah.
which it is. But actions are also a big part of that, is what I think.
Yeah. No, you're
And
exactly right.
what you're saying is I agree with you. You have to make that safe space for people to be open. That is part of communication,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's stages, podcasts, anything.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make that comfortable setting that people can let their guard down. They can be themselves. They can talk to you, right? They can be open to whether that's constructive criticism or the advice you give to them. They have to be open to accept it. If they've got their guard down, they're not going to accept it and they're not going to be willing to take it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Man, that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about getting to know you and being friends with you is that I know you're being yourself at all
Right.
times. You're genuine. I know we can have any kind of conversation. We talk about business, we can talk about life, we can talk about religion, we can talk about anything, and you're going to tell me what you think.
Yep.
And I know you've given me feedback and really even talk right at the beginning, talk about how I'm underrated. That's kind of a weird thing to tell somebody, man. I
Right.
appreciate you saying it, and it hurt a little bit, but hey, I knew you were coming from a place of love and care
Right.
when you said that.
Right.
But that's the thing, you've made that, and that's just who you are, and I know
Right.
that now.
Right.
But how do you create that when you're first starting to talk to somebody? It's by continuing to be yourself, no matter what. I mean, Mike Claudio, I know you're in his group. He's very blunt, very straight to the
Mhm.
point. And there's times that hurts a lot. But at the end of the day, you realize, I'd rather have that. I'd rather have somebody just tell me the brutal, honest truth and not sugarcoat it at all than trying to sugarcoat it, and then I continue to have the same problem over and over again. And
Right.
he's chosen to go that path. Like, I'm
Yep.
just going to tell you what's wrong no matter what. And I know he's tactful with it. It's not like he's just a
Right.
complete jerk
Right.
about it.
Yeah.
But still, a lot of people don't want to do that because they're afraid of how people are going to feel. How do you think people are going to feel if you've known for years the way things that they do are holding them back? And when they finally figure out that you knew that, that's going to hurt a lot more than if you told them up front, hey, if you don't change this, Yellow say, this is what's going to happen. People are seeing this and they're not liking that. It hurts up front, but it's like pulling off a Band-Aid. You pull it off real slow and it hurts the whole time, or you just pull it off real quick and it hurts in the moment, but it's good to go after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of that is, um, if they're being really straight up about it, they're also willing to receive that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
information from you. And if a person sees that I'm being blunt with you, but I'm not allowing you to do that back to me, I don't
Yeah, that's an
accept that.
issue.
That's a big issue. People close up. People don't do it. But also, like what you were saying, if like people realize, hey, you're just sugarcoating everything. Sometimes I'm paying you this money to achieve a result. You're not helping me. What's the point?
Yeah.
Because people do that. Like when you get enough tired of your own stuff, of being in that going in those circles, you want that blunt truth.
Yeah.
You want someone to point it out. Hey, this is what you need to change.
Mm-hmm.
That comes out communication.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And I mean, that's coaching in general for you as well. Like
Yeah.
you want to know that. I worked with somebody and I looked at them as that expert to give me the information. There was things that looking back, I could have done better. I could have communicated better
Right.
and everything. But they were the expert. I expected them to kind of set that standard based on the service that he was providing. And that's the same thing for you in your business. You have to set that standard. You have to ask those questions because I don't know about countertops.
Right.
Like, oh, I want a nice countertop. Okay, well, what do you mean by nice? Maybe you're talking about budget. Maybe you're talking about different materials, the way it looks, the way it's going to feel. Is it easier to clean? I'm just throwing random things
Right.
out there.
Right.
But you have to ask those questions for them to, oh, yeah, yeah. Or what kind of cabinets do you have with that? Some of them won't work. Again, I don't know about this, but you have
Right.
to be
Right.
asking those questions as that expert as well. Never assume that your client knows about your product or service. And even if they do, and you can come in there like, hey, look, I just want to make sure we cover everything. I want to give you the best product or service possible. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and they may seem very elementary, but I want to make sure that we cover everything. And just up front, so that way they're like, okay, Yellow Say may ask me some stupid questions, but that's okay.
Right.
He wants to make sure that I'm getting exactly what I want.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're not going to be bombarded by the questions at that point then.
Yep,
But if you
true.
just start asking questions without kind of prefacing that, they're like, what in the world? Yellow Say think I'm stupid? Does he think I don't know what I want?
Right. Right.
So, go in there with that.
I agree. I agree because what you were talking about is when you come in, and that's what we kind of do is, when you get the client, you really try to narrow down what color they want, what they want. You try to find out their budget without asking it directly. And that is a big thing of communication. There's also one thing I remembered when you're talking about it. I had this happen last week, I think. I was caught in the middle of an argument of two parties of people in business. And I call up my Sam coach. I said, Sam, or I text him like, hey, this situation I have. Sam calls me and he said, what you need to do is talk with both sides. He said, you need to have uncomfortable conversation with both sides. But he's like, when you have uncomfortable conversations, never make statements. Ask questions. Try to understand, why did they act like that? Why did they do what they did? And I went to both of the parties, and I started with a question. Hey, why did you get upset when he did that? And the person that started it, he started opening up. This is why I got upset. This is why I did what I did. And it ultimately led to, hey, can you please not repeat that again? If you have an issue, come to me directly. I understood. I solved the whole issue with just asking questions.
Yeah.
And that's communication. And after that situation unfolded, I was like, this is incredible. It was an eye-opener of communication, how important it is. And now when I have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, or when I see somebody having it, or I'm in one and someone's asking me, I can tell what their motive is.
Hmm.
If they're really trying to understand, they'll ask me. They'll
Yeah.
be genuinely curious. Well, if they're seeking something out for them, they'll be making statements from it. Or if maybe they don't know communication, that could be the case too. But
Yeah.
it was incredible. Communicating, asking questions is getting the person engaged, because then people actually open up.
Yeah.
It's vulnerability, and I'm sure you know that
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They want to know that they're being heard, and if you're just telling them things, they don't feel like they're being heard.
Yep.
So ask questions, get their advice, and then don't only do that because there's leaders that will do that too, and I'll call them more managers because leaders know how to actually inspire people and make change that they're also wanting to
You
do.
can have managers
But
and be leaders too.
yeah, well,
Kind of.
there's a
I
little
know
bit
you're talking
different
about
between
the
that,
title,
but
of
yeah,
being a leader, right?
but when you go and ask something, actually ask it because, like you said, with the motive, most employees they've gotten so used to leaders or leadership asking them, "Hey, we want your feedback," and they take the feedback, and it's almost like they're just throwing it in the trash. They do nothing with it. So it's like, why are we giving feedback? Nothing ever happens.
It
And
stops there.
have that communication. Look, we took this up to the upper management, and they told us this, or we had to work on this first. There's these other things before we can get to that, or we've got some other priorities based on things that happen. But communicate, because if you're just asking for feedback, and then people don't see anything happening with that, because everybody talks. Like I said, everybody's spreading that gossip around and they're talking about what they said and then a lot of it seems to be the same thing and nothing's being done about it. That's what's going on and that's destroying your culture at your company.
Right. What I'm hearing is you're saying communication, and I touched this too, isn't just talking. It's action.
Yeah.
It's action. If you just talk, you're just yapping.
Mhm.
You ain't
Mhm.
communicating. But then the action is what really fills. It's like a
Mhm.
two-part mix, right? That creates a communication. You said something verbally, and then you confirmed it with your action. That is the full word of communication, is of doing something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like this. I really throughout our conversation I learned it's like when you digging out that thing, learning from my own words, combining it with your knowledge. It's like learning a lot. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Um, what is that one thing that someone that one thing if someone did take something away? Where's that one thing you say that someone should that someone can listen to or someone can take and change their life with? That one thing that you would say for someone to take close.
Just try your best to make sure that whatever you're communicating that you don't communicate from your knowledge, try and communicate from the knowledge that the person you're speaking to has.
Right.
Because what like I said earlier, what's in your head, they probably don't have that understanding or they haven't connected those dots together. It's like whenever you're having a conversation inside your head and you're talking with somebody and all of a sudden you just change paths out of nowhere and it doesn't has nothing to do with what we were previously talking about. I was like,
Right.
how in the world did you get there? It's the same thing if you're not giving them all the information. Going back to the example as well of the dog food. You have to give every bit of information, not just what you thought that, oh, it's buy the dog food. Well, there's multiple things that could mean.
Right, right. You're in other words, you're assuming that person knows that information, that little bit that you
Hmm.
didn't include, but they don't know. So you're assuming because you know it.
Yeah.
And when you don't communicate, it changes the whole story and it just turns everything around.
Yeah. Or example for you as well, like, why is your price so high? Well, cost of goods have gone up. Cost of material, labor costs have gone up. And your quality is better than a lot of other people. Hey, I communicate more. There's these factors that factor in to why your cost may be higher than somebody else's.
Hmm.
And if you're not trying to communicate that in a way, and obviously you don't want to say it straight up like that, but like,
Right.
hey, we pay attention to our customers. We use the best material out there. You use these little things to help make sure that you communicate that and set that expectation that your cost is probably going to be higher. But you're setting that up front and saying all those things versus leaving it in your head and just, yeah, that countertop's going to cost you $10,000. What? But if
Right.
you said we're using the best material, we're sourcing it from here, we've got guys that all this stuff, you're kind of saying all these things together. Now, when you say 10,000, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They really take care of the client. I'm not going to have to worry about any needs because you asked all the right questions. You asked everything. So you want to make sure that you're over communicating, not just assuming that they understand and have all that knowledge that's in your head.
Bro, communication is big. This is massive. You were saying that our last RBO meetup, uh, Trevor and Kale brought this guy Michael Burnoff. Do
Hmm.
you know Michael Burnoff?
I don't.
You should check him out. He dialed in communicating. He's has like 20 years of experience in that. He stood in the room. He's not a salesman. He's not. And reason I'm saying this for you guys to understand how big communication is. He's not a salesman. He stood in front of that room. What do you do? I do sales. I do this. I do that. He literally sold every one of our products without knowing the product.
Man.
And he didn't portray himself as a salesman. He just portrayed himself as a communicating expert.
Yeah.
And because he was able to communicate, bro, he sold everybody's product. We wanted to buy our own products. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what communication is. It's
Yeah.
incredible. If you really start diving deep down, that's the skill a salesperson should have. And that's what separates good salespeople from not good ones. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
an expert at that topic, but that's something I do know. If you got good communication, that's a big separator.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Massive
Yeah.
separator.
Communication separates you from so many other people. And that's what makes leaders great is a way that they communicate, how they
Yep.
can impact you, how they make you feel based on how they communicated.
Yep. True. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap this up. But where can people find you if someone perhaps wants to dive in deeper in communicating? Someone wants to dive in, get someone to help and speak. Where can people find you? Where could they reach out? Maybe ask some questions.
Yeah, best place to find me is either on Facebook, The Real
Okay.
Philip Sessions, or over on LinkedIn at Philip Sessions.
Okay. And then you got Instagram that you post content there too as well.
Yeah, I'm not as heavily focused there, but I am there as well.
Yeah.
I am Philip Sessions.
Okay, I'll post it all in the show notes. You guys check him out, follow this man, and show him some love. Tell him he came from the podcast, and thank you guys for listening to this episode. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It was really, really good. I learned quite some stuff about communicating, So yeah, thank you for coming on, bro. You guys have an awesome day. Peace.